We all want to know how we can live longer, happier, and healthier lives. How we can stay trim. If someone in a white lab coat says something, we believe it right away.
However, we often follow rules and don't know who came up with them, or, more importantly, why.
Many people just need something they can believe in, and that's how myths are created. Myths are usually responses to problems people haven't found a solution to, and seem to offer a simple solution.
Can science destroy old myths, or does it inadvertently, constantly create new ones? In this luxury hotel near Garmisch-Partenkirchen, in the foothills of the Bavarian Alps, the guests are looking for more than just relaxation and wellness. They're hoping Dr. Christina Müller can help them. A general practitioner, she offers a detox treatment. Supporters of the detox idea believe that toxins from their food and the environment build up in their bodies. By detoxing, they believe they can remove these toxins from their bodies. The warm wildflower compresses are only the beginning.
We're going to get to work now. The detox organs have to get to work. We deposit toxins the same way we deposit fuel rods in waste repositories. You think radioactivity isn't nice. I don't want it outside my front door. It's fine there for now, so I won't think about it too much. That's how you can think about it within the context of your body, too.
However, it's only detox fans who share this view. The majority of medical experts believe detoxing is superfluous. Lillian Christ is a doctor at the Charité Hospital in Berlin. Like most other medics, she believes your liver and kidneys can remove waste products perfectly well, if you're healthy.
The body is generally very capable of removing such toxins. In addition, detox procedures can be dangerous. Sometimes people don't eat anything at all, or they drink too much water, and that means salts in the body are overdiluted. Doctors shouldn't recommend a detox to their patients.
And yet, detoxing is on trend. In Garmisch-Partenkirchen, the alkaline salt bath is part of the 5-day detox package, which costs €400. Nobody knows for sure how much the huge detox market is worth. Next up, there's the healing earth against the toxins in the body. But the majority of doctors say there's no such buildup of toxins in the body. Certainly, it can't be measured using scientific methods. Many detox programs resemble therapeutic fasting. The patients say they feel freer mentally and physically afterwards. It's the hormones associated with happiness that are responsible. The body releases them as you fast. If there were toxins in the body before a detox, there should be demonstrably fewer toxins after the detox, right?
Measuring detoxification is a tricky matter. We don't pursue any scientific research on this. But there's nothing better than seeing the faces of our guests at the end of the program when they say, "I'm feeling much better. I can feel myself again. I feel motivated to exercise." There's nothing better. So, in that sense, I don't need scientific research. I hear these sentiments all the time. Maybe I should conduct the studies myself.
But there's no shortage of studies looking into health and nutrition, says Lillian Christ from the Charité in Berlin. Barely a week goes by without new medical recommendations. But often they're based on research that isn't scientifically rigorous. They have too few participants, or there's no control group. Lillian Christ studies all the major diseases of modern civilization, such as cancer, dementia, and heart attacks. Looking at what might protect us and what might increase the risks, the epidemiologist is hoping to counter scientific myths, such as detoxing, with facts.
Science wants to bring the truth to light and wants to dispel myths. It wants to explain links and determine whether treatments help or not. The aim is to find out more about the human body, for example.
Lillian Christ works for the nationwide NARCO health study. NARCO is the German national cohort and has been running since 2014. The scientists want to examine 200,000 people at regular intervals over a period of 20 to 30 years. The scientists have set the bar high for their study. All the tests are strictly standardized, from the questionnaire to the smell identification test. Despite great progress in many areas, science often cannot find simple solutions to complicated problems.
Of course, people cling to results that sound like they can be put into practice easily. If a study says you just have to do X and Y and you'll live 10 years longer, then that's reported on by the media because people want to hear it. These medical myths are akin to a religion.
We believe quite a lot of things, such as vitamin C helps against colds. This idea dates back to the 70s. New studies have shown it to be a myth. Once a cold is there, vitamin C has no effect. Reading in dim light harms the eyes? Fortunately not. It's just tiring. It could lead to headaches. If the eyes can relax overnight, they're fit again the next morning. Cherries and water together cause tummy ache? That may have been correct in the past. Microbes in unclean drinking water, coupled with the fruit, could have triggered unpleasant fermentation processes in the stomach and guts. But improvements in water quality mean that this isn't generally a problem anymore. So what about the miraculous power of spinach? The green leafy vegetable became famous thanks to Popeye. Several generations of children were made to consume large quantities of the stuff. It would make them as strong as the comic strip sailor, right? The Ruhr University in Bochum is welcoming young guests today, Year 8 students from a nearby high school. They want to examine spinach more closely. They're testing the iron content of the veg in the lab. The spinach project was dreamed up by Katrin Sommer, professor of chemistry didactics. She's interested in how chemistry can be taught in an engaging manner. Maybe these students will go on to become scientists themselves one day. Katrin Sommer is convinced that examples from people's everyday lives are helpful, like Popeye.
I used to love watching Popeye, and my parents made me eat spinach before I was allowed to watch the show.
When he ate the spinach, he got huge muscles. He was a role model. Whenever I ate spinach, I imagined becoming strong.
dass man stark wird.
But the notion that there's a lot of iron in spinach is just a myth. Scientists themselves created this myth because sometimes they, too, make mistakes.
It probably came about due to a transcription error in the lab. A scientist forgot a decimal point. As a result, 3.5 milligrams became 35. Nutritionists really picked up on that. The recommendation was, eat a lot of spinach. It'll make you strong.
But there wasn't just one mistake. Quite by chance, a chemist in Basel found 35 milligrams of iron in dried spinach powder. After the transcription error, an error of logic, because the fresh hydrated vegetable only has a tenth of this iron content, the myth was born. But the misunderstanding was cleared up decades ago, and yet we're still left with the feeling that spinach is a miracle veg.
In this case, we've taken the myth that spinach makes you strong so we can sensitize the students to the idea you don't have to just accept such assertions. You can question them. And there are even methods by which you can question it. As part of this student lab project, we're doing scientific testing to dispel myths.
The students have incinerated the spinach and dissolved it in hydrochloric acid. The coloration reveals how much iron the solution contains. The result? Spinach is merely average when it comes to iron content. Wheat bran and pumpkin seeds, for example, contain far more. But myths weren't just created in the past. The present is also able to generate new myths. Can mobile phones cause planes to crash? Achim Enders and his colleagues at the German Aerospace Center in Braunschweig are investigating this potentially life or death question. The aircraft's electronic heart beats in the fuselage. Test engineer Thomas Heinecker performs a final check before today's experiment can begin. The test plane is an Airbus A320, one of the best-selling aircraft for short and medium-haul flights. Can cell phones really cause their tried and tested technology to seize up? This question has preoccupied us since the first mobile phones came out in the 80s. Fears of electromagnetic radiation were, and still are, considerable.
I remember having an electronic alarm clock that my phone interfered with. This possibility was transferred to the context of flying, where safety is the top priority. It was a sensible idea to be really restrictive about phones at first for fear it could be dangerous. But today we can say that we've gone too far.
That's why Achim Enders wants to test the aircraft's ability to withstand electromagnetic radiation. How much phone radiation can the onboard system cope with? The systems for navigation and communication are particularly sensitive. A special antenna is going to measure the electromagnetic waves. This plane can take more than 150 passengers. For this experiment, the scientists have only invited a few test subjects, but the data can be extrapolated for a fully occupied plane. Mobile telephony and aviation technology have adapted to each other. Cell phone radiation is lower than it was 30 years ago, and aircraft are better protected.
You always have to bear in mind that lightning bolts strike aeroplanes directly, that planes fly through radar waves, sometimes very close to the source. The aeroplane has to withstand that and is tested for that. Compared to those threat levels, the radiation coming from a phone is ridiculously low.
What about hospitals? Why are there still signs banning the use of mobile phones?
Often the radios in the nurse's office cause much more interference than the modern phones visitors have. Nowadays, almost all medical devices have shielding to protect them from electromagnetic interference, so phones don't cause a problem at all.
Schutz gegen diese Handystrahlung, wo ein Handy überhaupt nicht stört.
This has been the official position since 2014, for planes too. The European Aviation Safety Agency decided that passengers don't have to put their phones into flight mode anymore, but each individual airline has the last word.
So, okay, jetzt mal bitte für möglichst viel Datenverkehr sorgen, gerade auf Verbindungskabel nach Möglichkeit.
One phone can't interfere with the technology on board an aircraft. But in reality, there are hundreds of passengers on a plane, and many of them are carrying several electronic devices such as laptops, smartphones and e-readers. Achim Enders can measure this combined radiation, but it's very, very weak. We ask again, can a lot of electronic devices, a lot of active mobile phones collectively endanger the safety of an aircraft?
The answer is definitely no. It's not even so much about phones, which deliberately send out strong signals. Mobile phones also contain microprocessors, tiny computers that can emit electromagnetic radiation interference, including in the frequencies used by planes. But these signals are so weak, they're insignificant.
During takeoff and landing, phones should nevertheless remain switched off. In the event of an emergency, passengers shouldn't be distracted, and the devices can cause crackling in the line between the pilot and the tower. But that's all. Myths often arise from fear. Parents are particularly at risk. Mozart's music makes children more intelligent, even before they're born. That was the claim of US scientists 25 years ago. Follow-up studies weren't able to corroborate the effect. Listening to music has many positive effects, but becoming more intelligent isn't one of them. Reading to children is also said to improve children's intelligence. Studies have shown that frequent reading to children, particularly in early childhood, makes them somewhat more successful in school. But scientists are convinced that intelligence originates more from DNA than from the parent's behavior. It's different with this myth. Just let babies cry it out. That's not harmful. That strengthens their lungs, it is said. But in truth, infants can't soothe themselves. They need their parents' care. Scientific myths aren't just created through mistakes or uncertainty. The media are involved too. Xenia Post works at the Institute of Mass Communication and Media Research in Zurich. She researches how scientific insights are presented in the media. Climate change, for example. To this day, certain groups continue to deny man-made climate change. They describe it as a lie, a hoax, a myth. In this way, self-proclaimed climate experts managed to bring well-founded scientific insights into disrepute. Reports about the so-called myth of climate change are particularly popular in the United States. Paradoxically, one reason for the distorted portrayal of facts is the professional ethos of those in the media.
In den USA hat sich das bei Journalisten
Journalists in the United States try so hard to be objective that when they give airtime to an opinion or position, they also give a voice to the counterposition. That means that fringe positions are given a much stronger or disproportionate weight in the debate.
ein viel stärkeres oder ein wirklich überstarkes Gewicht in der Debatte bekommen.
Viewers mightn't realize that an overwhelming 97% of all climate scientists are agreed. Global warming is down to human activity. Xenia Post has been analysing the relationship between climate scientists and the media for years. One of her findings is that the scientists are scared that their study results could be hijacked and misrepresented in public.
Man konnte sehen, dass die
We were able to see that climate scientists had greater objections to publication when the findings suggested that climate change was progressing more slowly. They were worried that this finding could be instrumentalized by interest groups to say that man-made climate change was a myth and it was all a lie.
Ein Mythos konstruieren kann, den es gar nicht gibt.
Xenia Post's advice: communicate science openly and objectively without exception. There's nothing more scientists can do to prevent new myths. Everything else is in the hands of the media, their readers and viewers. March 2015. People who eat chocolate lose weight more quickly. This headline in Germany's mass circulation Bild newspaper created a stir. Publications and broadcasters around the world reported on the new miracle diet from Germany. In the Chocolate Museum in Cologne, we learn what's really behind this incredible study. Or rather, who? Diana Löbel. The filmmaker, seen here with museum confectioner Eiger Müller, deliberately engaged in some pseudo-science. She just invented the chocolate diet. Diana Löbel is a television journalist. Her idea was to test the gullibility of her colleagues. To do that, she needed a headline nobody could resist: slim through chocolate. Together with her co-author Peter Onneken, she managed to expose a sick system.
Our intention was to take a close look at it. What's happening in the nutrition and diet market? We found that the argument very often goes like this: a scientific study says that this or that makes us healthy or sick, and that we should consume more or less of it. And if you take a closer look at these studies, they're not scientifically reputable most of the time. That's what we wanted to document in our film.
All you need is a white lab coat, and ordinary people immediately become deceptively real scientists. Diet studies tend to follow a similar pattern. Various groups are set up and have to adhere to different rules. Afterwards, the scientists compare how much weight each group lost. In the case of the chocolate diet, it went like this. Group A was put on a diet and was given chocolate. Group B was only put on a diet. Group C continued to eat as before. Diana Löbel and Peter Onneken started their experiment with 16 test subjects. They were only told afterwards that there's no such thing as a chocolate diet. For 3 weeks, every candidate was weighed daily. All changes were recorded. Unfortunately, many disreputable studies are conducted this way. The desired result is cherry-picked from a large mass of different data.
We were a data leech. We wanted to get as much information from the test subjects as possible. They even had to measure their urine every day, which is a completely pointless piece of data. But we thought we'd generate as much data as possible so that we could put everything together in such a way that we could spin it and market our findings as best we could. And it worked.
The two journalists didn't completely make up the chocolate diet idea, but they twisted the data of their test subjects to fit their purpose. The bad thing is that many nutrition studies follow this formula. They don't deserve the label scientific. The diet industry creates its own myths in this way. The journalists' final step was to release the fake study to the public. They wrote a press release and even invented a research institute that had a reputable sounding name. The stir they created surprised even Diana Löbel.
It was crazy. We had a made-up institute with the address of the production company that produced our film. Nobody called. And it was just a little press release. These stories about food and about what we should eat and what we shouldn't run really well. We all want to know what the perfect diet is.
Diana Löbel managed to create a myth with the help of pseudo-scientific methods and her professional knowledge of what makes for good headlines. Particularly when it comes to food and drink, we like to put facts aside. We only listen to those things we want to hear. For example, strong liquor aids digestion. In truth, alcohol relaxes the stomach muscles. We feel less full. But it's a false message. Alcohol actually slows down the rate at which we process food. It makes it harder for us to digest. We shouldn't reheat mushroom dishes. An outdated rule. Today, mushroom dishes can be kept in the fridge for a maximum of 2 days, and then we should heat them to more than 70 degrees. That way, mold and bacteria won't spoil our appetite. Is glutamate responsible for nausea, headaches, and rashes? The Chinese restaurant syndrome is probably triggered by allergens, such as peanuts, shrimps, and herbs. Glutamate isn't to blame. It occurs naturally in almost all foodstuffs and is completely harmless. Myths about alcohol aiding digestion, for example, and a fake chocolate diet awaken false hope. Patients in the arthritis clinic in Gundelfingen near Freiburg are hoping for one thing in particular: to walk without pain one day. The orthopedic specialist Sven Ostermeier is an expert in knee surgery and arthritis. Osteoarthritis is a common complaint in Germany. More than 1 in 4 women and almost 1 in 5 men suffer from it. Their joints wear out too early and too quickly. Sven Ostermeier's patient today also has arthritis in the right knee. The specialist is performing an arthroscopy. The cartilage is smoothed out and the joint is flushed to clean it out. The problem is that statutory health insurance companies in Germany don't pay for this surgery anymore. One of the companies commissioned a study and concluded that arthroscopies were ineffective. Flushing out the joint was pointless. Its benefits, a myth. How do orthopedic specialists feel about this decision?
Some say it's an outrage. Others say, so what? I've always done things differently anyway. We can't choose as freely as we could in the past. As a result, patients who have statutory health insurance are barred from the possibility of a useful therapy.
It was here in Cologne, at the Institute for Quality and Efficiency in Healthcare, that knee arthroscopies were declared a myth. The assessor Stefan Sauerland spent 18 months reading and analysing everything written by scientists about arthroscopies. A trained medical expert, he concluded that knee arthroscopies, one of the commonest operations in Germany, were ineffective. They had a placebo effect, but nothing more. Tests showed that a faked arthroscopy was as effective as the actual procedure.
The placebo effect is all the stronger the more authentic, invasive and risky an intervention appears. Surgery has a much greater placebo impact than just taking a pill.
Stefan Sauerland's team of assessors researched knee arthroscopies with the help of a meta-analysis. They compared the data from 11 scientific studies with a total of 1,200 patients. The testers say it's no coincidence that the weaknesses of arthroscopies weren't found out sooner. Many of those involved in the healthcare system had a strong interest in keeping the myth alive.
Everyone had the collective belief that knees were benefiting from this. Patients were happy, doctors were happy, the industry was happy. It was lovely, and then it had the magic taken out of it. What's exciting is that you needed very precise scientific methods here to debunk the myth.
And some orthopedic specialists, like Sven Ostermeier, are still convinced by knee arthroscopies. And so, the myth lives on. How can we get rid of myths from our minds once and for all? The cognition psychologist Ulrich Ecker explains that the brain doesn't have a delete button. Once we've stored a myth, it's difficult to overwrite it with new information. Basically, what he's discovered is that we're mentally lazy.
With many of the things we hear, we don't have the interest or the motivation to investigate them fully. Our convictions often play a role too. If I want to believe in something and I'm convinced of it, and it fulfills a certain function for me, if it's important to my identity, then I won't want to see the counter-evidence. I prefer to hold on to the myth.
People like to stick with the familiar, preferring to block out things that are new. Ulrich Ecker is visiting the University of the Saarland. He did his doctorate here years ago. He conducts neurophysiological experiments to learn about the brains of test subjects. He discovered that attempts to debunk myths rarely work. Sometimes it even has the opposite effect.
Such refutations often causes the myth to be repeated, and that just makes this false information seem more familiar. If I want to tell you that vaccinations don't cause autism, I'm just repeating the association between vaccinations and autism. The more I do that, the more familiar this idea becomes. At some point, when you think back, you'll recall this association, and that's what comes to mind.
In his experiments, the psychologist presents stories containing different pieces of information. Some of that information is later retracted or invalidated. His finding: our brain prefers to store false information rather than leave a gap in the story. The only chance is this.
You need an alternative explanation. If you don't yet know the truth, it's important to find out the truth. And then it's equally important to present these findings to people. You have to explain them in a way they can understand. It's the KISS principle. Keep it simple, stupid.
These insights from psychological research provide a recipe for dispelling myths. It's crucial not to repeat the myth. An alternative, simple explanation is needed instead. But even this method can't combat one of our most popular myths. One glass of red wine a day is healthy. No doubt there are very few people in the wine-growing town of Iringen in southwest Germany who don't believe this. Sabine Bauder from the local tourism office even found an old guidebook in her bookshelf entitled The Wine Doctor. It dated back to 1753.
Und ich habe gedacht, ich frage mal Sie.
Sie denken, ich bin alt genug, dass ich das
vielleicht, dass Sie noch ein wenig Sütterlin lesen können.
Hildegard Stiegler helps decipher the old-fashioned German writing. She discovers recipes to treat colds and improve memory.
Wenn man Wein verkaufen möchte. Wein für Husten und
Of course, all the cures contain one thing: wine.
der Wein für das Gedächtnis. Es ist ja Alkohol darin.
It contains alcohol and carbon dioxide.
Dinge im Wein.
There are lots of things in wine that we like and that stimulate us. That's why we have such good conversations when we've had some wine.
Wenn man eine Erkältung bekommt,
If you get a cold or you notice you're coming down with one, before you've developed a temperature, you can preempt it with red wine. You have a glass of red wine in the evening, you wrap up nice and warm, and then you go straight to bed. That way, you won't get sick. But you have to catch it at the right moment.
The people of Iringen take these tips with a sense of humor.
Das ist der Wein für das Gedächtnis.
But what do doctors recommend?
The healthiest thing is to consume no alcohol. This single glass of red wine is more of a kind of risk limitation. That's not the recommendation. Basically, if you're going to drink wine, then don't drink more than this amount.
The wine festival in Iringen is attended by 80,000 visitors every year. It's said that the antioxidants in the wine have a positive effect on the heart and circulation. Earlier studies that declared a moderate amount of wine to be healthy suffer from serious methodological flaws. Scientists compared moderate alcohol consumers and strict teetotalers.
They forgot to filter out those who didn't consume alcohol because they were recovering alcoholics, or because they were very sick and didn't consume alcohol for that reason. So a healthy group was compared to a sicker group. The error is that you weren't comparing the alcohol consumption, but the pre-existing health of the patients.
Und hat nicht quasi den Alkoholkonsum verglichen, sondern den Gesundheitszustand, der zu Beginn der Studie bestand.
So, wine isn't a medicine after all. Nevertheless, belief in this idea is firmly lodged in our collective consciousness, because we like it that way. And that's all too human. Myths will always have their place in our society, and scientific myths in particular.
We always say scientists have found, and we like doing everything scientists tell us to. We're all gullible when it comes to science.
But not every study is really scientific, and the current state of research is always changing anyway.
It's important to teach children to think critically. We have to tell them when they're young that there's a lot of information in the world and much of it is not correct.
That doesn't mean we shouldn't believe anything anymore. But we have to check how plausible information is and the reliability of its source.
People who need myths need this feeling of security, but scientists want to find out what really helps.
Was wirklich hilft.